Hello and welcome back to our course for analysis of financial indicators. And this time already we are starting the last part of this session, and today we will talk about efficiency indicators, and we'll look how we can measure, for example, effectiveness of internal resource management in a company. So starting this session, first indicator to mention is fixed asset turnover ratio, and it is calculated dividing net sales of total fixed assets. This indicator shows how much sales revenues are generated for $1 of fixed assets, and it is important for companies' owners because it shows how efficiently the property, plant, and equipment is being used. So, as we see, once again, it is context-dependent ratio, and in a sectors where we need a lot of fixed assets like manufacturing, most probably will have a little bit lower ratios than comparing, for example, with service industry, where companies might operate with very low levels of fixed assets. So again, please pay attention to the context and type of business you are being in, but in general it could be interpreted as a really important indicator, and again we should look in a timeline, look how this indicator is changing from one financial year to another, and again basically we should look if we identify such kind of changes, we should identify in which part of this formula does make the most significant effect. So, of course, if fixed assets are increasing and net sales are being stable, we will have a declining value of that indicator, and as in previous sessions, we can ask a very similar question: are really these investments in fixed assets necessary? So, for example, okay, do really a company needs to invest so much? Of course, if indicator is going up, so that means that additional fixed assets do generate additional net sales, and that's fine, and company can be happy if it has such a trends. Maybe one tricky part I would like to mention about that indicator, that okay, if we talk about net sales, so more or less everything is clear. Net sales do represent all the invoices a company is stating, but some tricky part is with fixed assets. For example, in some cases that indicator might go up, but that does not indicate any increase in efficiency. When it might happen, so imagine that, for example, a company is operating with similar levels of sales. A company is selling annually products for 1 million, and for example, in the first year, a company had fixed assets for $1 million as well. But next year, when we take next year, for example, we might see that, okay, we have the same stable net sales, so it looks everything maybe okay here, but we have lower value of fixed assets. For example, we have fixed assets of 900,000. And formally, it might look that our indicator is going up, so it might seem that our fixed assets are generating more sales, and it could look like a company is working more efficiently. But a tricky part is that fixed asset value may go down because simply of depreciation. So the annual depreciation is lowering value on the bottom part of this formula, and we should compare then in such a case these parameters. So if we see declining fixed asset value in that category, we should look to the line in profit loss statement what depreciation and amortization did a company have during this financial year. And for example, if we see that fixed asset value has declined by 100,000 and depreciation was contributing to 100,000 as well, so in such a case we will say that a company is operating with the same fixed asset levels and it has not increased efficiency most probably in any ways. So this is a tricky part, and pay attention to that analyzing that indicator. So again, it is recommended to compare this ratio with those companies working within the same industry, and in general, again, the higher value of this ratio should indicate better results. So if we go to example, looking to the profit loss statement and balance sheet. So in our example, we have our sales revenue for 1.8 million and we have fixed assets of 300,000. So from that calculation, we see that our fixed assets are making 6 turnovers per year, and in general, it is a really good indicator and company might be happy with such results. Another indicator is asset turnover indicator. So if in previous we saw maybe more assets that are linked with strategic investments, that means fixed assets or long-term assets. So now we are talking about total assets and comparing them with net sales. So again, the interpretation might be the same. It shows how much revenues or sales are generated for $1 of total assets, and company's owners are interested in how efficiently the asset is used. So the asset turnover is again important to them, but the same. This tricky part we have mentioned in the previous formula is being present here as well. Just we have to split in this case asset category and look what percent of these assets come from long-term assets and what proportion is coming from short-term or current assets. So again, pay attention to that. And again, the higher value of this ratio, the better is the situation of a company. And looking to our example, we can see that our company is making sales revenue of 1,800,000 and total assets contribute to $833,000. So our asset turnover is 2.16. So again, not a very bad indicator, but maybe it could be a little bit higher. But again, it depends on industry and we cannot say that this indicator is bad or good for any kind of businesses. One more indicator linked to turnover is equity turnover, and equity turnover ratio is calculated net sales dividing from total equity. So it measures how much revenues are generated for $1 of total equity, and of course, as we are talking about the equity part, this indicator is primarily interesting for companies' owners or potential investors who would like to see what sales does their ownership generate. So in general, again, expectation is if we are attracting some external investments and are increasing equity part, expectation is that in similar proportion should go up and net sales values. So in our example, we can take our sales revenues that are contributing to 1,800,000 and that is 233,000, and we see that equity turnover ratio is 7.72. And in general, it is really not bad indicator, and company I think might be really happy having such equity turnover. Another indicator that already is a little bit more tricky one because it is not possible to calculate it just from data in a balance sheet or profit loss statement. So it is sales per employee, and sales per employee is received dividing net sales from number of employees in a company. That indicator measures the amount of sales generated per one employee, and it is popular and commonly used ratio, and it mostly interests companies' owners as it shows its labor productivity. But it is also important for investors as well. And while calculating sales per employee ratio, we use the number of employees at the end of the period. But in order to get a more precise value of this ratio, again, recommendation as usually to apply average indicators if we can get them from some kind of sources. So, of course, a general expectation is that if we are increasing number of employees, net sales of a company should go up as well. But also, this indicator, especially looking in a timeline to the proportions and trends, can give us various insights about efficiency, about changes in our company. For example, a company had some staffing policy changes or was going through some restructuring procedure. So in such a case, if we see that, for example, number of employees has gone down, but sales have remained the same, so in such a case, in many of the situations, we can say that a company has improved the efficiency and achieved this primary goal through maybe decreasing cost, but still keeping the same sales level. So in general, of course, the higher value of this ratio is better, and again, it is not recommended to compare this ratio with those of the companies working in different industries. Because, again, in service company we will need one number of staff, in a manufacturing company maybe much higher proportions. And now we are going to another important group of efficiency indicators, and we will have several parameters that are showing days outstanding of some category, and first of them is days inventory outstanding. And to calculate that indicator, we need to divide inventory from proportion of goods sold and number of days per year. So this indicator shows the number of days that it is needed for a company to sell out stock. So this ratio is similar to the inventory turnover ratio, only it provides information on company stock levels in days, but not in times. So it is important for companies' owners as it shows how effectively the assets are used in the form of inventory, and especially that parameter, of course, is important for wholesale and retail companies that are having high levels of inventory. So again, in order to get a more precise value of this ratio, in some cases it is a little bit maybe dangerous to use inventories at the end of financial year. For example, imagine if we take just balance sheet for the last day of December, we can have various situations that maybe a company during Christmas period, for example, was applying high discount levels, sales, promotion strategies, and so on. So naturally, maybe at the last day of December might have lower inventory levels as usually. Or in some specific cases, it might have even higher levels as normally, and this is why if we have, for example, quarterly reports, really my recommendation would be to take average data coming from that a little bit to adjust all these seasonal shifts. And looking to the practical part, how this, for example, indicator might be interpreted. So, for example, if we see that we have high number in that indicator, for example, days inventory outstanding is contributing to, let's say, 180 days. So what does this mean? This means that for our company it takes approximately half a year to sell all inventory. And here now we may ask a question, is this number of days acceptable? So again, is this number of days acceptable or not? It depends on product. For example, of course, if we are, let's say, trading some food production and we know that the average duration of our products is 1 month, so 30 days. So if we see that on average it takes to sell our inventory 180 days, so of course such a value could be a disaster for us, because it indicates that most probably all our products in our warehouse will go out of date before they are being sold. So that's maybe extreme case. But in general, it shows that, of course, if we have a large number of days to sell all our inventory, it might already indicate some challenges or show that some inventories are being managed not very efficiently. So, from that perspective, the lower is the number, the faster we can sell our inventories, the lower money levels we have to freeze in our company. So that means, okay, if we sell our inventory in 30 days period, so that means our inventories are making 12 turnovers per year. So that means that we can operate with much lower cash flow levels or investments, than, for example, to reach the same turnover, and if we need, for example, on average 90 days to sell all our inventory. So decreasing value in this category shows increasing efficiency in inventory management. But also be careful on very extreme cases. For example, imagine we have a situation that our days inventory outstanding is 5 days. So that means on average it takes 5 days to sell all our inventory that are being held in warehouse. So of course, from one side, that shows that a company has to invest low levels. With small investments, we can generate really big sales revenues and make a large turnover. But there is a risk. There is a risk, for example, if we know that a day's inventory outstanding is 5 days, and on average, after placing an invoice from our suppliers, we are getting products in 5 days period as well. So that means we are working already on some kind of the edge situation, and let's assume the risk, for example, if our supplier is being late to present us products, and instead of 5 days, for that supplier it will take in some case to present products 7 days. So that might mean that if we sell our all inventory in 5 days, and in this specific case we get updates and additional inventory only in 7 days, so we have 2 days gap, and it might indicate that 2 days we may be more or less out of the business because we don't have inventory and we don't have what to sell for our customers. So talking about such extreme cases, be also careful, and so in sometimes very low numbers may also provide some links for potential challenges as well. So value interpretation, of course, there is no general norms for this ratio and it should be compared within the same industry, but in general, again, high days inventory outstanding values means that stocks are being sold out too slowly. And looking to our financial tables, we can take our inventory. We have inventory for 300,000 and we take our cost of goods sold, divide 900,000 this value from number of days per year, 365, and we get that on average it takes 121 days to sell all our inventory in warehouse. So not a very bad number, but maybe it could be a little bit lower. On the opposite side, we can look to days sales outstanding. So here actually that indicator is calculated taking all accounts receivable and accounts receivable dividing from net sales dividing from number of days per year. So this indicator provides information on company's customers' debts or accounts receivable and shows collection effectiveness in days. And this indicator is interesting for companies' owners as it also indicates the ability of companies' managers to collect customers' debts. So again, what could be a practical side of that indicator? Of course, the lower the number, the better the situation, because it shows that, okay, we are stating an invoice, and the lower is the number, the faster we are collecting money from our clients. But what indicator is good or bad? Again, it depends on our sales policy for our customers. Imagine a situation we have indicator, for example, 30 days. So that means that on average it takes for us 30 days to collect money from clients after the invoice is stated. Is indicator good or bad? Actually, it depends. If we look to our standard agreements with our customers, and for example, we see that on average we give 2 months or 60 days for our clients to cover invoices. And our number shows that we have 30 days. So that means that majority of our clients pay invoices even faster than contracts do require. So in such a case, 30 days, that's fine. But let's take another case. For example, our crediting policy for our customers is 7 days. 7 days to pay invoice after it was stated. And if we have indicator of 30 days, that means that our customers are being late to cover invoices on average 23 days. So we have already quite significant delays, and this already means that we should review maybe sales policy for some specific clients. Maybe for some clients we would like to ask in advance payments, because this number shows that actually they are being late to fulfill their financial obligations for us. So again, is indicator good or bad? Value should be compared with our standard agreements with our clients. But in general, of course, a low value shows that company needs less days to collect its debts, and that's usually a good parameter. Let's take our case and our example of profit loss statement and balance sheet. So we are taking client debt. Our client debt is 100,000, and we are dividing that client debt from sales revenue divided from 365. And in our example, we see that it takes 20 days to collect money from our clients. So in general, it is really quite acceptable value. And we can look to the same indicator just on the opposite side, and we can calculate days payable outstanding. And here that indicator is calculated dividing all accounts payable, that means our financial obligations for suppliers, from cost of goods sold, and again divided from number of days. So it indicates the amount of days needed to cover accounts payable to creditors in the given period of time. So of course this indicator mostly interests companies' short-term creditors, like for example various kinds of suppliers. And again, value interpretation is that a high value shows that our company might have difficulties covering its payments. And again, in the same way as, for example, when we have talked about the previous parameter, here we should make some comparative analysis with our standard agreements with suppliers. If we see that on average we cover our debts in 30 days period, and for example our suppliers are giving us only 15 days to do that, that means that we are being already late almost twice. And here we should also already measure the risk that maybe some of our suppliers may calculate additional interest payments for us, or maybe simply not to supply more products until we are not covering previous invoices. So again, it is context-dependent ratio. And in our example, we are taking again accounts payable. In this example, we have 100,000. We have our cost of goods sold, 900,000, divide from number of days, and we see that we are covering on average our invoices in 40 days period. And from these three indicators, we can calculate cash cycle. And the cash conversion cycle is calculated taking days inventory outstanding plus days sales outstanding and minus days payable outstanding. So cash conversion cycle measures the number of days needed to sell company stocks, to collect receivables from customers, and pay out short-term debt to its suppliers. So in general, this measure indicates the time that is required to turn purchases into money collected from customers. So it is very important for companies owners, as it indicates the efficiency of management performance dealing with sales, stocks, short-term debts, and amounts receivable, as these activities are the background of the business. So, of course, for a company, just a goal would be to minimize this cash conversion cycle as much as possible, because it shows that we faster convert our sales to real money, and then we can make other investments or make new purchases. So, in our example, looking to previous calculations, for example, our cash cycle is might be, for example, 182 plus 20 minus 40, and in this case is 162 days. And here we had a group of indicators when we talked about various turnovers in days, but the same parameters we can calculate in a little bit different way, and we can calculate them as turnover ratios. So, for example, talking about the same parameter of receivables, we can calculate receivable turnover ratio, and we can get it dividing net sales from accounts receivable. So that indicator again shows how effectively company collects its funds from its customers for sold on credit goods or services. So again, looking to the practical side, if, for example, we say that our net sales contribute to 1.2 million and accounts receivable contribute to 100,000. So 1.2 million dividing from 100,000, we get indicator value of 12. And that means, for example, 12, if we divide from 12 months, we get that on average it takes us 1 month to collect funds. For example, if our receivable turnover ratio is equal to 2, so again, 12 months per year we divide from 2 and we get that on average it takes already 6 months. So from this way of calculation we also can get average number of days or months, how long does it take to collect or pay invoices. So in our example, for example, if we take our sales revenue, 1.8 million, our client debt is 100,000, and we divide these numbers and we get that receivable turnover is 18. So really very good value. In the same way, we can calculate payable turnover ratio, just dividing cost of goods sold from accounts payable. So interpretation the same. For example, if we get, for example, number of 2, so again, we can divide 12 months from 2 and we see that it takes 6 months, for example. So unduly small value of payable turnover shows that a company might have difficulties covering its payments to suppliers. So coming back to our example, we are taking 900,000 in cost of goods sold, dividing from 100,000 in accounts payable, and we see that our indicator in this case is 9. So also not very bad one, quite satisfactory one. And finally, inventory turnover ratio. Here again, cost of goods sold divided from inventory, and this indicator shows the number of time the inventory is turned over in the period of time. So again, let's say if we have 4 turnovers per year, that means that on average it takes 3 months to sell our inventory, 12 divided from 4. And again, what indicator is good or bad here? So expectation is that, okay, at least this indicator should be somewhere in the interval between 3 or 4. But again, it very highly depends on industry. For example, if we have a company and we are manufacturing, let's say, furniture. And in some period we have received really good discounts and have bought a lot of raw materials in the form of wood. And for example, we have really high levels of this kind of inventory, and maybe our inventory turnover ratio becomes quite low. But if we are talking about such kind of inventories, maybe it's not so bad if you got good discounts, if we have where to store that inventory. Maybe that's fine. No moral, no technical depreciation or some risk of losing value in some kind. In any case, we will use this wood in manufacturing process sooner or later. So in that case, maybe low turnover ratio, not so bad. But let's assume we are talking about food products. And we know that again, the same example, average duration of our products is 1 month, and we see that our turnover ratio is 6. So that means on average it takes 2 months to sell our products, and here we already have high risk that, okay, our products might get outdated. So we see in one aspect and one context and indicator with value of 2 might be not so bad. In our case, indicator with value of 6 is already extremely unsatisfactory. And looking to our example, again, we can take our cost of goods sold with a value of 400,000, and we receive that our indicator is 2.25. Actually, a little bit too low, because it is an example taken from a retail company, and maybe we should expect that some kind of efficiency improvements could be made within that company. So, this is maybe it talking about the indicators. So we have gone through three major groups like profitability, solvency, and efficiency indicators. So I hope it has helped to make you the overall picture and get the meaning and the sense why these indicators might be useful to calculate. And finalizing, maybe I would like again to give some insight how we might interpret these indicators. So first of all, as I have mentioned, it is really reasonable to take some timeline, 3-5 years or some other period, and look how indicators are changing. But also, my really recommendation is to analyze these indicators in one window. You can simply make that, for example, with Excel, put formulas with calculations, and maybe even mark some fields, what values are acceptable and what not. So, for example, we can mark acceptable intervals with green values, average with, for example, yellow windows, and, for example, for negative or unsatisfactory parameter values, we can set some, for example, red painted cells in Excel. And here, for example, just if we take in one window, we can just have some kind of traffic light spreadsheet and simply see what indicators turn green, what indicators turn yellow, what indicators turn red. And this mapping of indicators, just simply putting a glance, already can give us various kinds of insights. So once again, just if you would like to get a ready-made spreadsheet, so you are really welcome to download it. It is presented at the end of this course, and you can download it following the link at the bottom of this presentation window. So you are really very welcome to do that. In that Excel spreadsheet, you will get a ready-made balance sheet and profit-loss statement. So again, that values that can be calculated automatically organized already with formulas, and you will have to fill only part of the data in balance sheet and profit-loss statement. The rest is calculated, and again, all of these indicators are calculated automatically as well. So, of course, you can modify that spreadsheet up to you. You are really welcome to do that, and please download. And so, finalizing that course, as I have promised in the previous parts, you can also get certificates on completion of this course, how to be certified for completion of this program. Also, you can get information pressing a link at the bottom of this presentation window on our website. If you are following this course on the external sources, like, for example, YouTube, so you are really very welcome to visit our web page, just pressing the provided link below the YouTube video, and on our website, in this course page, you will get all the information how you can get certified for that course. You will be provided with a test. You will need to answer the questions, and if your answers are correct, and 70% of your answers are correct, so you will be issued a certificate. So, thank you very much for attending this course. Of course, this is not the only course we are having on our website. Please follow us on YouTube channel, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Twitter, or simply follow our blog on lanskoronskis.com webpage. So, following us, you will get all this necessary information about next courses that are coming. And again, you will find quite many of courses in the topics of finance, strategic planning, and management. So, thank you for being with us in that course, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in our next courses as well. So, thank you very much, and see you in the next courses.